The stranger on the roadside sun was just starting to dip behind the hills when she saw him. The road stretched long and empty, carved through green valleys and winding past sleepy farms. Birds fluttered overhead, returning to their nests. She had been walking for hours. Her bag was heavy, her shoes thin, and her muscles sore, but she didn't complain. She never did. Her name was Eliza. As a foreigner in a country that wasn't her own, Eliza had come here chasing something she couldn't quite name. She spoke softly, with an accent no one could place. She dressed simply, often in second-hand clothes. She worked wherever someone would take her, in cafes, on farms, in markets. People barely noticed her, and that suited her just fine. But that day something changed as she walked down the narrow country road. Humming quietly to herself, she saw a black car parked just ahead. It was expensive, the kind of car that didn't belong on dirt roads. Its sleek body glinted under the fading light. The hood was up, and steam curled into the air. A man stood beside it, looking helpless. He was tall, dressed in a tailored suit that looked out of place here. His hair was neat, but his face was tight with frustration. Eliza slowed down, unsure. She had been taught not to interfere. But something about the way he looked, the way he tapped his phone, checked the engine.
Out.
Looked around. It reminded her of how she often felt. Stranded. Lost. Overlooked. So she walked over. Quietly. "Need help?" she asked gently. He turned. He blinked, as if surprised to see someone like her. She wore a faded blue dress, her hair pulled back in a loose braid. Her sandals were dusty. "It just stopped," he said, gesturing to the engine. "I don't know what's wrong," he called. "For help, but there's no signal out here." Eliza nodded slowly. She walked around the car and peered into the engine. Her father used to fix old cars back in their village. She used to watch him, May, she asked. The man hesitated, then stepped aside. She poked around gently, listening, touching wires, checking the connections. After a few moments, she reached into her bag, pulled out a rubber band and a bobby pin, and did something small but clever. "Try now," she said. He got in, turned the key, and the engine roared to life. He blinked, got out, looked at her with a mix of confusion and awe. "How did you do that?" "Just lucky," she said with a shy smile. He laughed. For the first time since she saw him, his face relaxed. "You just saved my day. I had a meeting. An important one. If I had missed it, ... He trailed off, shaking his head. Then he looked at her again, properly this time. "What's your name?" "Lisa. I'm Marcus." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a sleek wallet. "Let me give you something." "For your help?" She shook her head immediately. "No, please. I don't want anything. But you helped me." "That doesn't mean I want a reward. You needed help, that's all." He stared at her for a moment. Not many people said no to money. Not many people turned down what he offered. Eliza smiled again, then turned to walk away. But just before she left, he saw something. A ring, thin, silver, old. It was tied to a string around her neck, and for some reason, it changed everything. He watched her walk away down the road, her figure growing smaller in the twilight, and in his heart, a question began to grow. Who was she really? Because there was something about the way she said no to money, and something about that ring, that made him feel like he had just met someone important, someone unforgettable. Marcus didn't know it yet, but that one moment, a car broken down, a kind woman with clever hands, and a ring he almost didn't see, would change everything. He would search for her, meet her, and soon, the world he knew would fall apart. But for now, she disappeared into the dusk, and the ring around. Her neck gleamed faintly in the last light of day. The woman who walked away, Marcus, couldn't sleep that night. He tried. He lay in the soft sheets of his luxury hotel, the ceiling fan humming above him, but his mind wouldn't stop turning. Something about that woman, Eliza, had taken hold of him in a way he couldn't explain. He had met thousands of people. Powerful men, famous women, ambitious dreamers, socialites with polished smiles. Everyone around him always wanted something, a deal, an investment, his time, his favor. But she had walked away. She didn't ask who he was. She didn't care what kind of car he drove. She didn't flinch when he offered her money. And that ring, that small silver ring. Hanging from a string like it was sacred, Marcus sat up in bed and ran a hand through his hair. He didn't even know her last name. The next morning, while others buzzed around him trying to plan his day, he sat in silence, still thinking about her. When his assistant Jared knocked and stepped inside with a clipboard full of schedules, Marcus held up a hand. "Cancel everything for today," he said. Sir Jared looked startled. "You have the investor meeting at 10 and reschedule. I need to go for a drive." Jared opened his mouth to argue, then shut it. He had learned long ago not to question Marcus when he got that look in his eyes. Marcus got into the same black car, now fixed, and drove down the same road where he had met her. He drove slowly, scanning both sides of the road. He passed farmhouses, narrow wooden fences, and fields where sunflowers stretched toward the sky. He rolled down the windows and listened, hoping to hear that soft voice again, the one that had asked so gently, "Need help?" He stopped by a local store and asked the woman at the counter if she had seen a foreign girl walking alone. "You? Mean the quiet one?" the woman said, pushing her glasses up her nose. "With the braid?" Marcus nodded. "She comes by sometimes, buys bread, never talks much. Do you know where she stays?" The woman shook her head. "No one does. She's like a ghost, that one. Sweet, kind, but she keeps to herself." "If she comes again," Marcus said, reaching into his wallet and placing a card on the counter, "can you give her this?" The woman nodded. Marcus left with a strange ache in his chest. It had been a long time since someone made him feel unsure. He was always in control, always 2 steps ahead. But Eliza made him feel like a boy again. Meanwhile, Eliza was walking through an orchard not far from there. She carried a small basket and collected apples that had fallen on the ground. Her hands were stained with dirt, her cheeks flushed with heat, and a few curls had escaped her braid. She didn't know that someone was searching for her, didn't even know the man's full name. To her, he was just another person who had needed help. And she had helped him. Not for thanks, not for reward, but because once, years ago, someone had done the same for her. That memory stayed with her always, a cold night. An empty train station, no money, no food, and then a kind stranger. A woman who had given her a blanket and shared her tea. "This world," the woman had said, "will be cruel. But we don't have to be." Elisa had never forgotten that. Now, years later, she was the one offering small acts of kindness, not because she wanted to be noticed, but because it was all she had to give. That night, as she sat by the fireplace of a modest old cabin where she rented a room from an elderly couple, she opened her hand and looked at the ring. It wasn't just a ring, it was a promise from a man she once loved, a man who had disappeared. No one knew about him. Liza never spoke his name, but every time she touched that ring, memories flooded back. His laugh, his letters, his sudden silence. She had come to this country searching for answers, but months had passed, and she still hadn't found anything. Sometimes she wondered if he had ever truly existed. And now fate had thrown another man in her path. A man with a kind smile and eyes that looked too deeply. But Eliza had learned, the hard way. Hearts break quietly, so she stayed away. But the world has a strange way of pushing people back together. 2 days later, as she walked past the same shop, the woman behind the counter waved her over. "A man came asking for you," she said. Eliza blinked. "He left this." She handed her a small business card. It had a name on it, Marcus Gray. Eliza's fingers trembled slightly. She looked at the name, then back at the woman. "He seemed important," the woman added. "Drove a fancy car, but nice. Very polite." Elisa folded the card and placed it in her pocket. That evening, she stood at the edge of a field, the wind tugging at her skirt, her fingers holding the card tightly. Should she call? Should she find him? She didn't know. But as she turned to head back to her cabin, something caught her eye. A black car, parked far down the road, and a man standing beside it, looking at her. Marcus. They both froze. The wind blew between them. Then slowly, he began to walk toward her, and her heart, which had been quiet for so long, began to race. She didn't know it yet, but that moment, standing in a golden field with the wind, swirling and the sky turning orange, was the beginning of something neither of them could stop. Marcus reached her breathless. "I've been looking for you," he said. And before she could answer, his eyes dropped to the ring around her neck and asked the one question she wasn't ready for. "Who gave you that ring?" Her mouth opened, but no words came. Memories surged, emotions flooded, and in her silence, the world seemed to hold its breath. The ring that never left. For a long moment, the silence between them said more than any words could. The fields around them whispered as the wind moved gently through the tall grass, swaying it like waves in a calm sea. Birds flew low, heading home, and the golden light from the setting sun wrapped them both in soft, fading warmth. Marcus looked at her, his eyes no longer filled with curiosity, but with something deeper, something unsettled. The way his voice had dropped when he asked about the ring, it wasn't just a question, it was a pull, as if he felt something strange, something too big to explain. Eliza stood still, completely still. Her fingers brushed against the ring as it swung gently at her chest, tied to that old string like a forgotten secret. She didn't speak. She couldn't. But in her heart, memories had already broken free like water bursting through a cracked dam. Marcus took a breath, his voice low. "I've seen that ring before, or something just like it." Eliza's eyes widened. He noticed. "I was young," he said slowly. "Before I built my first company, I worked odd jobs. I traveled. I met a man once, quiet, sharp, kind. We shared a train ride. I remember because he showed me a ring like that. 8 silver, simple. He said it belonged to the woman he would marry, he said. She wore a braid, and she laughed like she carried whole seasons in her lungs. He said, if she ever got lost, he would find her again." Eliza's throat tightened. She could barely breathe. "That man," Marcus said carefully, "was his name. Daniel." She turned her head slowly, the name hitting her like a wave. "Yes," she whispered, voice trembling. Marcus blinked. "Do you know what happened to him?" she asked, her voice barely holding together. "No," Marcus said. "That was years ago. We went separate ways. But that ring, ... Looked down again. I never forgot it." Eliza took a step back, her hands gripping her dress. He vanished. She said, "I waited months. No call, no letter. I searched. I crossed countries, no trace, but you kept the ring. I couldn't let it go." The air around them felt heavier now, as if even the earth was listening. Marcus watched her for a long time. "I think you deserve answers." Eliza shook her head. "I've already tried. I went to the embassy, hospitals, everywhere. No records. He just ... disappeared, like the wind." She looked away, her eyes misty, her voice growing softer. "And now, I don't know who to trust anymore. I thought maybe this place would help me forget, or heal, or at least stay quiet long enough to stop dreaming of him." Marcus felt a strange twist in his chest, a mixture of sorrow and admiration. This woman, this quiet, barefoot, strong-hearted woman, had carried all of that alone. He spoke slowly. "You helped me that day, even though you didn't know who I was. You fixed my car, refused my money, and walked away without asking for anything. I don't want to owe you, but I want to help." "Why?" she asked, finally meeting his gaze. Marcus paused. "Because I think fate brought me back to you for a reason, and because no one should carry this kind of weight alone." He reached into his coat and pulled out something unexpected, a notebook. Worn, bent at the corners, filled with scribbles and contact names, he flipped to the back and tapped on a page. "I know a man," he said. "He finds people, not for money, not for games, but because he believes people shouldn't stay lost." Eliza's lips parted. She didn't speak. Marcus continued, "If there's even the smallest chance Daniel is out there, this man can help." She stood still, frozen by hope and fear. Both of them hurt in different ways. "You don't have to decide now," he added gently. "But if you ever want to try again, you won't be alone." That night, Eliza sat by the fire once more, staring into the flames. Her fingers held the ring tightly. Memories flickered behind her eyes. Daniel's voice, his laugh, his hands warm against hers. His promises, they had been so young and so certain. But the world had shattered those dreams. Eliza had walked through that brokenness for years without stopping. But now, standing on the edge of something uncertain again, she asked herself, was it worth opening the wound? Just to chase a ghost. And yet, something inside her whispered, yes. The next morning, she found herself outside Marcus's hotel. She didn't even remember walking there. The sky was cloudy. Quiet chill hung in the air. Marcus opened the door and saw her standing there without a word. She handed him the notebook. Call him, she said. Let's find out if the past still wants to be found. Just like that. Everything shifted. What began as a simple act of kindness on a country road had now turned into a search for the truth, but neither of them knew that the truth was far more complicated and dangerous than they could imagine. For deep in the city, in a place Marcus hadn't thought about in years, someone else had already started asking questions. Someone who knew Daniel, someone who had been watching Eliza, and the closer she and Marcus got to the truth, the more dangerous it would become, because some people didn't want Daniel to be found, and others were willing to do anything to keep his secrets buried. The truth wants to be found. Clouds that morning were thick and heavy, hanging low over the city like a warning. Even the air felt different, tighter, more expectant, like something was waiting just out of sight. Eliza sat in the passenger seat of Marcus's car, her fingers curled around the strap of her worn bag. She stared out the window. Her thoughts tangled in a storm of memory and doubt. Marcus drove in silence, one hand on the wheel, the other tapping restlessly on his leg. He could sense her nerves. He felt them too. They had agreed to meet the investigator at a quiet cafe on the edge of the city, away from attention, away from noise. Marcus had worked with the man once before, a private researcher named Henry Vale, someone who specialized in finding people others had forgotten. As they reached the cafe, a modest little place tucked between two antique stores, Eliza's heartbeat quickened. Every step toward the truth felt heavier. When they entered, a man in his late 50s stood up from a corner booth. He wore a dark coat and a scarf, despite the warmth. His hair was streaked with gray, his eyes sharp and searching. You must be Eliza, he said calmly, extending his hand. And you're Marcus Gray. They both nodded, double quotes. Please, sit. I took the liberty of bringing a few things, just in case. Slid into the booth, Eliza felt the worn leather seat beneath her and tried to ground herself. She could feel the ring against her chest. It was always there, like a heartbeat of its own. Henry pulled out a thin folder. He opened it slowly, revealing old papers, copies of documents, even a faded photograph. He pushed it gently toward her. You said his name was Daniel? Henry began. And that he disappeared just over 4 years ago? Yes, Eliza replied, her voice soft. We met abroad. He was working with a relief group. Then one day he just stopped writing. I've been looking for him ever since. Henry nodded. I started with immigration records, travel logs. Then I dug into archived hospital files. That led me to this. He tapped the photograph. It showed Daniel smiling beside a jeep, his arm around a group of children in a dusty village. The sight of him made Eliza's chest ache. This was taken 6 months before he vanished, Henry said. In northern Ghana? I've never seen this, Eliza whispered. Few have. I got it from a contact who used to work with the NGO he volunteered for. Henry then pulled out another document, a scanned letter. It had smudges along the bottom edge as if someone had dropped it in water. This, he said, was addressed to you, but it was never sent. Liza's eyes widened as she leaned forward. How did you get this? Someone in the group's admin team kept a copy. Apparently Daniel had planned to deliver it by hand, but he never got the chance. Know what happened to him either. One day he just left. No explanation, no warning. Eliza's fingers trembled as she picked up the letter. The handwriting was unmistakable. Daniels, she began to read. Eliza, if you're reading this, it means I failed to find you before things got worse. I can't explain everything in writing. It's not safe. Just know that I love you. I've always loved you.
Ow.
And if something happens to me, don't stop looking. The truth is hidden, but you'll find it. Someone will help you. Trust only those who don't ask for anything in return. The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. Marcus leaned forward, his voice low. What does he mean by not safe? Henry answered, that's what worries me. I started pulling threads. I found something ... strange. He opened his laptop and showed them a map. Markers spread across it, highlighting locations Daniel had traveled to. They followed a pattern. And at the center of that pattern was a company logo. Marcus froze. That's my father's old corporation. Henry nodded grimly. The company Daniel was looking into before he vanished. Your father's company ran several covert medical operations abroad. They shut down right around the time Daniel disappeared. Marcus stared at the screen. I thought, those operations were humanitarian efforts. Maybe they were, Henry said. Maybe they weren't. Elise's mind was spinning. Everything she thought she knew about Daniel's disappearance was breaking apart like glass. But why would he be looking into that? She asked. He never told me anything. He just said he was helping people. Henry gave her a serious look. Sometimes helping people means uncovering things others want buried. They left the cafe an hour later. Marcus didn't speak for a long time. When he finally did, it was with a voice filled with weight. My father died 3 years ago. I didn't take over the company. I walked away. Didn't want anything to do with that world. But if Daniel found something, if he was silenced, then we need to find out what. Eliza nodded, her voice quiet but firm. I'm ready. Over the next few days, they worked together. Henry dug deeper, and Marcus used old contacts to access restricted archives. Slowly, puzzle pieces began to form, a shipment that was never logged. A name that appeared in Daniel's notes, Drive E. Corbin, a facility in the mountains, closed down quietly. Eliza felt herself pulled between the past and the present. She had come here to forget, but now she was more awake than ever. In one of Daniel's scanned journals, she found a line underlined in red. If anything happens to me, the truth lives in the blue room. Find the blue room. They didn't know what it meant. Not yet. But it was something, a thread to follow. And then came the twist. Henry called late one night. You need to hear this, he said, his voice tight. They met at his office. He pulled out a voice recording from a former worker at the old mountain facility. In the recording, the man spoke quietly. We weren't just storing vaccines. We were testing things. Not legal, not ethical. One day a volunteer, a guy named Daniel, started asking too many questions. Next day he was gone. Management said he left. But I never saw him leave. He just ... disappeared. Eliza's body went cold. Marcus clenched his fists. They silenced him. Henry nodded. Or worse. But Eliza didn't cry. Not this time. 8. She stood slowly, her voice steady. We're going to that facility. Lisa, it's been shut. For years, Henry warned. It's abandoned, locked up, guarded, even now. And if someone's watching, it could be dangerous. She looked at him. He risked everything to protect people. To protect me. I'm not turning away now. Marcus stood beside her. Neither am I. And so they made a plan. 3 people. 1 mountain.
Us.
And the secrets buried inside the blue room. But what they didn't know was that someone else had already heard about their search. Someone had been tracking every move, watching them, listening, and now that someone was preparing to stop them no matter what it took. The road to the blue-roomed road twisted like a serpent through the mountains, carved into cliffs that hung above steep drops in deep silence. Fog rolled low, brushing against the windshield as Marcus tightened his grip on the steering wheel. The silence in the car was thick, but not uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that comes when words are no longer needed, when everyone knows what's at stake. Eliza sat in the back seat, staring at the forest blurring past. Every mile they covered brought her closer to something she wasn't. Sure, she was ready for. Daniel's name still echoed in her mind. The ring against her chest felt heavier than ever. She kept her fingers curled around it, as if grounding herself through its presence. Henry sat beside Marcus, flipping through a paper map marked with red circles and arrows. "The facility should be another hour north," he said. "But once we reach the gate, we'll need to go the rest of the way on foot." Marcus nodded without speaking. His jaw was set. None of them knew what they'd find there. The closer they got, the more real everything felt. This wasn't just a search for answers anymore. It was a confrontation with the past that had tried its best to stay buried. They arrived at a narrow clearing just before sunset. Thick trees surrounded them, towering like sentinels. The old gravel road ended in front of a rusted metal gate, flanked by tall fencing topped with coiled barbed wire. Beyond the fence was silence, no birds, no wind, only the weight of forgotten years. They got out of the car quietly. Henry walked up to the gate and pressed a palm against the cold metal. "It's been abandoned, but someone's still maintaining the perimeter," he said. "Look at the padlock." "Recent?" Eliza stepped forward, staring through the gaps in the fence. "We're not turning back," she said. They followed a narrow path around the side, weaving through trees and over roots until they found a break. In the fencing, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it, Henry had found it on an old satellite image. "This way," said. They slipped through the gap and entered the facility grounds. Ahead of them stood a low concrete building, windows dark and boarded, walls stained with time and moss. Weeds had grown wild around the structure. Vines curled along the roof like nature, trying to erase what man had built. Inside, the building was colder. They moved carefully, their flashlights cutting through the thick dust that hung in the air. Long-forgotten papers fluttered under their feet. Rusted medical beds lay toppled in hallways. A broken vending machine still hummed faintly in the corner. A strange reminder of life once here. "This place feels wrong," Marcus muttered. "It was wrong," Henry replied. They found the main lab on the third floor. Shelves of shattered glassware. Open drawers. Notebooks half burned. Henry turned to Eliza. "The journal said the blue room. Any idea what that could mean?" Eliza shook her head slowly. He never explained. It's just that if something happened, the truth would be there. They split up, searching the rooms one by one. Most doors opened into dusty offices, cold storage rooms, and broken labs. Then Eliza found it. A room at the end of a hallway, with a rusted plaque that had faded beyond recognition. The door was painted. Blue, not just any blue, but a strange deep shade that stood out from everything else. She called the others. "It's this one." "I'm sure of it." Marcus stepped forward and tried the handle. Didn't budge. Henry reached into his coat and pulled out a small metal tool. "Stand back," he said. He worked for a few moments. Then there was a soft click. The door creaked open. Inside was darkness, but not emptiness. Rows of metal cabinets lined the walls. Filing drawers, folders, tapes, everything untouched for years. Sealed in cold shadows, they stepped in together. Flashlights flicking from corner to corner, Marcus opened one cabinet. "Medical records," he said. "Names, dates, doses." Henry opened another. "Test subjects, volunteers. But some of these, they don't have proper IDs, just numbers." Liza moved to the back of the room where a locked glass cabinet stood. Inside it were black notebooks. With red tags. One notebook had Daniel's name on the spine. Her breath caught. Marcus smashed the glass with a metal stool. He handed her the book. Eliza opened it, trembling page after page of Daniel's handwriting. Detailed notes, dates, observations, suspicions. Testing started with good intentions. They wanted to speed up immunity responses, but it turned into something else. Undocumented trials. Volunteers went missing and asked questions. "I was warned. I stayed silent for too long. Now I'm going to expose them." The next page was stained with something dark. The writing ended abruptly. "This is it," Liza whispered. "This is why he vanished." He tried to stop them. Suddenly a sound echoed from the hallway. A door slammed, then footsteps. The three froze. "Someone's here," Henry said, pulling Eliza behind a cabinet. Marcus followed quickly, crouching low. The footsteps got louder. Shadows moved past the doorway, men, armed. Eliza's heart pounded. "We need to move," Marcus whispered. Now. They slipped out a back door, through a fire escape, and into the trees behind the facility. They ran, through mud, through roots, through branches that clawed at their faces and clothes. Behind them, voices shouted, but they didn't stop finally, after what felt like hours. They reached the car. They drove in silence again, headlights cutting through the night. No one spoke until they were miles away. Then Eliza broke the silence. They tried to erase him. "But we found him." Henry looked over. "We have proof now. But it's not safe to release it yet." Marcus nodded. "We'll plan carefully. Make this public the right way." But Elisa was no longer just thinking about Daniel. She was thinking about all the others, those who had been silenced, or those who had trusted the system, or those whose names were just numbers in a folder. She had set out to find one man. Now, she had uncovered something bigger, and she wasn't going to stop. But as they reached the city's edge, Marcus's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen. His face went pale. Henry leaned over. "What is it?" Marcus showed them the message. "Stop digging. You've been warned." Second message followed. It was a photo taken from a distance. "Eliza, earlier that day, someone was watching them." He voiced that broke the silence. Morning came slowly, filtered through gray skies that held no warmth. The city below seemed unaware of the storm building above, it a storm not made of wind or rain, but of truth. Eliza sat in the corner of the hotel suite, staring at the phone in Marcus's hand. The message still glowed on the screen. It hadn't disappeared. "Stop digging. You've been warned." And beneath it, the photo. Her, standing near the old cafe. Taken from a distance, whoever had sent it was close. To close, Henry paced the room, his jaw tight. His mind raced through every name, every connection, every wrong turn they might have taken. Someone had been watching them the entire time. "They don't just want to scare us," he said finally. "They want to remind us they're still in control, that they can reach us anytime." Marcus sat beside Eliza, his expression unreadable. The anger in his eyes had simmered into something colder, more dangerous resolve. "This ends now," he said. "We're not backing off. Not after everything we've seen." Henry hesitated. "If we go public with this, it'll destroy people. Powerful people." "Then let it," Marcus said. "They destroyed lives, erased them. They buried Daniel. They would have buried her too if they had the chance." Eliza looked up, her voice quiet but steady. "We can't stay in shadows anymore. This story belongs to more than just us." Just like that, the decision was made. Marcus called a contact at one of the most respected independent news networks. A journalist named Maya Lane, fearless, sharp, and known for exposing corruption at the highest levels. She owed Marcus a favor. But when he mentioned the contents of the Blue Room, she didn't need any convincing. "Send everything," she said over the phone. "But meet me in person. We go live tomorrow." They uploaded the documents, the audio, the photos, Daniel's, notes, all of it. And then they waited. That night, Eliza stood alone on the hotel balcony. Below her, the city buzzed like nothing was wrong. Cars honked, lights blinked in high-rise towers. People laughed as they walked past cafes and shops. And yet she knew everything was about to change. Marcus joined her, handing her a cup of tea. "You okay?" he asked. She didn't answer. Right away, instead, she looked up at the stars. "I used to talk to him," she said softly. "Daniel, in my head, every night. Just ... small things. How my day went. What I ate. Sometimes I'd cry. Sometimes I'd laugh. I'd always ended with the same thing. What's that?" I told him I'd find him. Or at least his truth.
Marcus
Looked at her, something flickering behind his eyes. "You did." Eliza turned to him. "No, we did." The next day arrived like thunder. The news story broke online first. Headlines screamed. Secret trials exposed. Whistleblower disappeared. After uncovering unethical experiments, exclusive. Daniel Lear's lost journals revealed buried corporate scandal. Woman's search for missing fiancé sparks national reckoning. Maya's broadcast aired that evening. A special segment. She didn't just report. She invited Eliza to speak. Eliza stood under the studio lights. Quiet at first, the camera blinking red. Then she began. Her words weren't loud. They weren't fancy. But they were honest. She told the world about Daniel, about the ring, about the vanishing, about the blue room, about the fear. But most of all, she told them about love. They tried to erase him, she said, but love doesn't vanish, not when it's real, and truth doesn't stay buried, not forever. The silence that followed was electric. And then the flood began. Emails, calls, witnesses, former workers from the facility came forward. Others who had once been part of those trials. The government launched a formal investigation within 72 hours. Arrests followed executives, doctors, even a politician. Everything fell like dominoes. The company's name was dragged into courtrooms, lawsuits stacked like bricks. The world had heard Eliza's voice, and it refused to forget. And then one evening, weeks later, Henry knocked on her door. His face was pale, his eyes wide. "We found something," he said, almost breathless. Eliza froze. "Where?" "A private hospital. Remote, under a different name. Off the book's records." Daniel's name showed up 2 days ago, a patient release log. He was there, under observation. Memory, trauma. She couldn't move at first. Then she whispered, "Where is he now? Transferred? To a care home outside the city? But alive. Eliza, ... He's alive." They drove in silence again, but this time, the air was different, electric, trembling, full of too much hope, too much fear. The care home was simple. White walls. Flowers blooming out front. The nurse at the desk smiled when she heard Eliza's name. "He talks about you," the nurse said. "Every day." And then, just like that, the door opened, and there he was, Daniel, thinner, tired, but alive. He turned slowly when he saw her, his lips parted. His eyes filled, and in the smallest voice, cracked but familiar, he said, "I told you, I'd find you." Eliza stepped forward. No tears yet, just breath, just the ring at her chest. She untied it from the string and placed it in his hand. "You didn't need to," she said. "I found you." They sat together for a long time. No rush, no cameras, no speeches, just two people, broken but not destroyed. And outside, the world kept moving. But somewhere in it, people remembered her face. The simple woman, the foreigner, the one who helped a stranger with a broken car. No one had known her name then, but now they did. Not because she was loud, not because she had power, but because she reminded them that kindness matters, that love endures, and that, even when the world is silent, one voice can change everything.